Kia ora koutou. Matatu Aotearoa, the Teaching Council is pleased to facilitate this review symposium for ITE providers. In preparation, can you please turn on your cameras, ensure your microphone is muted to maintain audio quality, and introduce yourself using the chat. Let us know your name, where you come from, and what your role is, please. Tēnā koutou. Tu matatia, tu ramatia, te tuapapa o te matatu Aotearoa. Ki runga, ki raro, ki uta, ki tai, koia ko te manakitanga, te whanaunatanga, te pono me te whakamana I te ako. Haumie, huie, tai ki e. Ko Talia toku ingoa, he tohu tohu aho. I'm an advisor in the teacher quality team, te ohu pairewa o ngā kaiako. A reminder that the slides from today will be sent to you afterwards, and the slides and recording will be published on the Teaching Council website, so you can go back and retrieve it anytime you like. Tēnā koutou. Over to you, Jane.
Oh, no mai, haere mai. It's wonderful to see you all here. It's such a busy time of the year, so we'd like to acknowledge that your attendance here today. Ko Jane Franklin toku ingoa, ko po whakahaere Teacher Quality Te Matatu Aotearoa. I'm the manager of the Teacher Quality team here at the Teaching Council. I'd just like to quickly introduce my teacher quality team colleagues. We have Jocelyn Pullock here. Could you just give a wee wave or kia ora? Simon Cottle. Bill Hubbard. Anahira is away today. And we also have Joe Scott here from our policy and implementation team. Kia ora, Joe. So today the purpose of this symposium is to familiarise you all with review process which is coming up next year for some of you, what documentation is required by the council prior to the program review occurring, type of evidence that is needed and that we're seeking, and the outcomes that are possible from the program review event, how it connects to NZQA and QAC processes, and also we have a Ministry of Education colleague here today to give you an update on PLD that's going to be offered. And with that in mind, I'm just going to introduce you to Ines Jeffson. He's Principal Advisor, Te Portahu Curriculum Centre from MOE. Over to you, Ines. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Jane. Kia ora koutou, ko Ines Jeffson toku ingoa. I am, as Jane said, Principal Advisor in Te Portahu, the Curriculum Centre. Just a little bit of background, I am a primary school teacher and previously a multitude of different leadership positions. Been here at the ministry for a couple of years now. So I am here to talk very briefly about this PLD offering for ITE. We can move to the next slide. That would be fantastic. Okay, so basically what we've done is we've recognised that we can provide support for ITEs to make sure that our beginning teachers or our provisionally certified teachers are ready to use structured literacy approaches and to support ITE with that. This is ministry funded and we believe it closely aligns with some of the new and amended requirements that are coming through. So what we've done is we keep going. As I said, this is brief. Move to the next slide, please. That would be great. So what we've done is we've gone to our existing structured literacy approved providers that are doing PLD already in schools, and we've asked them to provide 3 days of in-person training. We've identified the 25th to the 27th of February in conjunction with the Teaching Council. That's probably the best date offering we could get, acknowledging that a lot of our providers are very busy in schools as well. And then we would carry on with 3 webinars through March and April, and that will be with a range of New Zealand and international experts in structured literacy approaches. So that's kind of what we've got. As I say, today is very much a very high-level intro. Just check my notes that I haven't mentioned anything else, forgotten anything else. No, that's cool. If we could move to the next slide. So the company that has been awarded this contract is Learning Matters. They are a very well-established structured literacy approach PLD provider, been in around about 8 years in this work. They've got their facilitators have extensive experience in implementing structured literacy approaches within their own schools and classrooms. They've, as it says, they're partnered with hundreds of schools included, or schools to strengthen that capability. They've got their platform to support the learning. They are already, as I said, Ministry of Education PLD provider for structured literacy approaches. They've been involved with the Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions back in the literacy and communication trial. Currently, Carla McNeil, who's the General Manager, is the lead for accelerated literacy learning, all. And they've also had their own thing, the limit certification for those for intervention teacher. So they're quite an experienced PLD provider. They will be developing materials to support this for ITE, and that will be used in their in the training. They will be in a Carla is going to present at the ministry-led ITE forum on the 28th to give a much more information than I'm able to give here in about 5 to 10 minutes. Unfortunately, she was unable to make it today. I'm sorry, I am doing lots of talking at you, not modelling the science of learning at all. So I do apologise. This is one of those information transfer kind of times. If we can just move to the next slide. Because basically, I guess the questions you're probably going to have, and I'm guessing will be that, you know, what do we need to do now? Well, we're just finalising locations, dates, and all kinds of things like that. So watch out for more information. It will be coming out in the next few weeks, and book out that time in calendars for your, I don't know what the official term is. Will they be lecturers? They were when I was at Teachers College a million years ago. The 25th to the 27th. So that is going to be held in multiple locations around Aotearoa, New Zealand. So there will be probably in main centres. We've looked where we can cluster ITE together to get the maximum people there. But again, that information will be coming out in the next few weeks. And that's probably all I've got to say at this time, Jane. Sorry, and again, that was very much me just talking at you, so I apologise for that.
No, we really appreciate you taking the time, and that's great. Thank you. I think that we're going to hand over to Jo Scott now. Kia ora, Jo. Jo, I think you're on mute. I'm going to jump in. Okay, so today, as you can see, the slide here is about the intent of the new program review process. And you can see the bullet points there to ensure new teachers are equipped for their first teaching role. The graduates are prepared to meet Ngā Paerewa standards for the teaching profession, assess the program's approval mandate, mirror early stages of the monitoring, review and moderation cycle, and ensure a well-prepared workforce occurs. Next slide, please. So to continue to be approved, as we know, this is in accordance with the requirements. Producers graduates have said who meet Ngā Paerewa standards and achieve desired graduate outcomes. And that 7.5.2 is from the new policy that's just been published. Kia ora. Next slide. Hand over to Simon Cottle.
Kia ora koutou. Can we just go back one slide, Ottilie? Yeah, just to point out that document on the right, we are producing some review guidelines. We'll get that to you shortly, and that's going to cover some key things like the review panel agenda, the composition of the panel and what their key roles are, the timeline, pre and post panel, and some practical submission tips. And like Jane pointed out, these 3 points here from 7.5.2, that's our main takeaway today. That's the 3 criteria that ensures that a program can continue to be approved. Now we'll pop to the next one. Now, for those of you that were there for the launch of the MRM policy, the Approval, Monitoring, Review and Moderation policy, we brought up this timeline. And just a reminder that when a program receives approval in its formal approval letter from the Teaching Council, there's a date at the bottom for review. And 7.21 of the policy says that approval date will be after the second cohort of student teachers have graduated for a 3-year program, or after the third cohort for 1 or 2 year programs. Now, the pink in there is the NZQA requirements. The green is the Teaching Council requirements. And also, we don't want to be presumptive, is that not everybody in your institute would have seen that approval letter, and people move on and different people become responsible for different courses. But rest assured, you get plenty of notice of the proposed review date. We're already fully booked for the first half of next year, and Talia will keep in touch as to when those dates occur. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. So, like, we want to be as open as possible in the way that information is collected and submitted, and this is just a possible approach. But basically, we want to provoke you with some questions, and it's up to you as the ITE providers as to the evidence that you will provide. However, my colleague Jocelyn will be going through 7.4.4, which gives some very specific data that will be really useful for achieving that objective of a program continuing to be approved. Now, in the chat, we've got some lovely mihi there. If you also want to populate that with pātai, feel free to do it slide by slide. And what we'll do is, after this presentation recording is made available and the slides are made available, we'll work through those questions, collate the themes, formulate some answers for you, and we'll get that out in our December newsletter. Now, the other thing about a template, a proposed template, a possible template, is although for this first round of reviews, we're going through a panel approach, under 7.3.1 of the policy, in the future, the council will be able to establish whether a review panel is required or whether we deem that to be unnecessary, in which the case could be in the form of a self-assessment by the provider. So this is where we've started on that journey. And if you're looking at the screen, we'll go to the next slide. These groupings of the requirements is based on how the approval panels base their agenda. So rather than it being a monotonous 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 2.1, 2.2 onwards, we've found in our experience with approval panels, these are requirements that naturally sit well together. And as we move on to working with Te Whareo Rangitohira and the requirements in our Māori medium space, they are already very familiar with this clustering of requirements with the dimensions in Te Whareo Rangitohira. We've got there a column about both stating how you continue to deliver. So you can see now we're moving into some past tense, whereas the approval is future tense. We intend to. The review process, we can now start moving into post tense of how it's gone, how it's improved, how it's evolved, with the backup of some evidence. So Jocelyn will be going through the 7.4.4, but of course there's all those other things like the information that's been included in the annual reporting up until the point of review, and of course all those internal and external review processes that you already have in your institute. And finally, just looking at that template, this would be a good opportunity that if you've made minor or major program changes, to track how they've landed and impacted. It's probably fair to say the review panel will be interested in any conditions that were imposed and how they've worked out in practice. And again, I'll just come back to those 3 points, the 3 criteria that allow a program to be continued to be approved. And that is, continues to be delivered in accordance with the ITE program requirements policy under which the program was approved, continues to produce those amazing graduates who meet Ngā Pairi with the standards in a supported environment, and is achieving those desired graduate outcomes. Now I'm going to hand over to Jocelyn that will go into the details of evidence as outlined in 7.4.4 of the policy. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Simon. Next slide and next one, please, after that. Thank you. So this is the nitty-gritty, I guess you'd say. You know, what is it that the council are looking for, or the review panel are looking for? And it's important to note that this is, you know, the evidence may include, but there might be some other evidence that you can also provide, or that may be asked for as well. So the review panel will consider the evidence in the original application, advice, so as Simon said, around the conditions or maybe even some suggestions, and information gathered as part of the panel discussions with the provider and their key partners and or NZQA and or QAP as appropriate. So for graduate employment data, you may hold some of this data, such as in graduate surveys or even employer surveys, anything like that. The council does hold some of this data, but it's only in relation to changes in certification and recertification. So there is some information there that the council will be able to supply the panel, but any more information you have as part of your review processes would be really useful. Throughout, we can also get some data through our data sharing agreement with the MOE, and we'll be able to get that through with the assistance of our registration team, which links a teacher's name with their qualification. Next slide, please. This registration and certification data, it does have limited value as sole data. So as you know, people might be, teachers might be going overseas or have educate, you know, be successful in education policy roles in New Zealand. But you know, we're hoping that some useful trends will emerge as the panels increase. So the council does hold registration and certification data, and we can legally and ethically identify for each program. So we'll be looking at what certificate status that graduate teachers hold, and how long tō teachers or teachers with a provisional practicing certificate hold that status, but before becoming before having a tūturu or full practicing certificate. Obviously, that particular data, this data will be impacted by the quality of the induction and mentoring program, but all programs are affected in that way. So again, like the previous one, we'll be looking for trends as we go through the different panels. Next slide, please. So feedback from schools, kura centres, from Māori, iwi, from community groups and so on. this is what you will already be gathering under the requirement 1.3, so that partnerships requirement. And so we're looking for information provided by yourselves about how effectively graduates demonstrate reliable and thorough practice against the standards for the teaching profession, how classroom ready our graduates are, and how effectively graduates adapt to the complexity of teaching. So it's really important that you will be gathering this already. So that's really that will be really helpful information for us to share as part for the panel. And also, how capable are graduate students or graduate teachers in moving into leadership or mentoring positions, and what is your evidence for those views? In terms of Māori and iwi, who are your key partners, how have those partnerships been strengthened and expanded since the approval, the original program approval? How have they been involved in reviewing the program and identifying improvements? What's the plan on how authentic partnerships with key partners will be strengthened and expanded over the next 2 to 3 years? So what's happened since program approval and what's the plan going forward? And we need to be clear with our Māori and iwi that we're not asking for feedback about the provider, we're asking about the program and the graduates coming from those programs. Also, what changes could add strength to this program from the perspectives of Māori and iwi? Other groups with an interest in ITE, such as PLD providers, healthcare organisations, industry employers, other key partners, how are those partnerships also being strengthened and expanded since the original program approval? Have they been involved in reviewing the program and identifying improvements? And again, like we said earlier, it's important that we get feedback about the program, not the provider as such. Also, how much has the design and delivery of this program involved authentic partnership with Māori and community groups? And those what changes could add strength, and what is your evidence for those views? Have you done that through surveys? Have you had hui with partners, with Māori, iwi, schools that your students go out into? So where is the evidence for that? Next slide, please. The policy refers to feedback from ITE students being collected by you using your existing and well-established systems. However, the review panel may wish to collect information directly from student teachers or graduate teachers if they deem that appropriate. And rather than collecting data from graduate students, it's also possible to ask providers to collect that data from students who are about to graduate. Course evaluations, how well do they feel prepared to go into teaching? How well does the program, or did the program, empower the graduate to understand the responsibilities of the profession as defined by the standards for the teaching profession? What parts of the ITE program gave significant strength to their preparedness to teach? And what gaps do the graduate teachers or do you as the providers recognise in the ITE program? And again, what is the evidence for that, for those views? This will all be in the provider guide, so you don't feel like you have to rush everything down. Next slide, please. So in terms of monitoring reports, whether they're the interim monitoring reports or monitoring reports from NZQA, the council should hold this data. However, we may ask, or we may ask the provider or NZQA if we don't happen to have the latest version of a monitoring report. But that's a really useful place to find information. And lastly, please, next slide. You will have attended this year's national moderation event. So information about that, how that has impacted your, what takeaways you got from that national moderation event, of course, this year's focus was on the culminating integrative assessment. So how has that impacted your program? So that's, again, really important information to have. So again, this is just some of the information, may include, but you may well find other information that would be useful to share as part of the review. Thank you. Over to you, Jo.
Kia ora. Thanks, Jocelyn. Just checking everybody can hear me okay. Great, thank you. So this slide is just talking about the key teaching task and requirement 1.4, where we shared some changes in terms of that or introducing that requirement. So in terms of the key teaching task for structured literacy and at this point, these are obviously newly introduced, so there'll be a period of evaluation of those. So they're not going to necessarily be evaluated in the review at this point because of that time period that we indicated in the when that information was distributed. But over time, we'll start to see the impact and want to look at the impact of those key teaching tasks for your programs and get into a little bit more depth with those. You'll be waiting to also see the information about maths entry, and so that is pending and should be with you soon. On to the next slide, thanks. So just thinking about program, if you've got a program that's not currently being taught, it's important to just notice here that if you're intending on or you wish to maintain the approval of that program, then the review process will apply. But if you're not intending on continuing that program and haven't already, you would need to complete a formal withdrawal of program approval so that program doesn't need to participate in the review cycles. And if you're intending on teaching a program out, it would still need to be in the review process. But if you're no longer teaching, or if you're no longer teaching the program, so the key thing there is if the program hasn't been taught, there needs to be a formal withdrawal of program approval to not have that program in the review cycle. And the next slide, please. So this slide here talking about connection with other processes. So the council's review report is sent to the provider and NZQA or a QApp, whichever is applicable for your program. And then the approved program and ITE provider gets published on the council's website as appropriate. And on to Bill there. Thank you, Bill.
Kia ora, Jo. Morena tātou, ko Bill Habatakoangoa. I work in the role of Tohu Arahi, lead advisor in the Teach Quality team. And my 3 slides are probably the simplest of all. So because they are intuitive and they relate to processes that you are probably already familiar with. So it's a 2-part process for review as it is for approval, in that the review panel has the role of making a recommendation, which is this slide, and in a moment we'll go to the next slide, which shows the council also has its own decision making. So for this slide, the review panel have got 3 options that they can use for recommendation. That is that the program continues to be approved, it continues to be approved with suggestions, or it continues to be approved with conditions. And also, we will make clear by which date the program should be next reviewed. Next slide, please. So then the panel recommendation makes its way through processes to the council, and this falls now under 7.5, the Teaching Council decision. And the council will strongly consider the panel recommendation, but is not necessarily bound to it. And the council has the options, once again, continue to be approved. There could be conditions applied to that, or alternatively, the program approval could be withdrawn, although that's not necessarily likely. So if we go to the last slide, for me, this shows the panel process for review, and I've already hinted at it in the last couple of slides. You'll get verbal feedback from the review panel. There'll be a report drafted. And during that time, if there are any conditions associated with the panel recommendation, you as the provider can attend to those conditions. And then the report, hopefully with conditions all met, will make its way to council leadership, NZQA leadership if required, and the decision will be relayed to your organisation, and expenses will be recovered thereafter. So hopefully those 3 slides are intuitive, and I hand over to Talia now for the concluding pieces. Kia ora.
Kia ora, ngā mihi Bill. Ngā mihi nui, a big thank you all for your time today in attending the review symposium. We'd like to acknowledge your ongoing commitment to the IT requirements, including building those authentic partnerships and your mahi to ensure our wonderful graduates are ready to enter the profession. As always, if you have any questions, he pātai, please reach out to us at iteadmin@teachingcouncil.nz. Next slide, please. So shortly there'll be a poll which comes up on the screen, which asks the question, how likely is review to be a useful continual improvement process that assesses that program delivery is adhering to the IT program requirements policy? So we invite you to add your feedback and comments, and as Simon mentioned earlier, we'll collate and put all of these results as well as feedback and answers to the questions in the chat into our December IT newsletter, so please keep an eye out for that. If you could pop the poll up, thanks Ottilie. Kua ea ki runga, kua ea ki raro, e rongo whakairihia ki runga ki a tīna, tīna, homie, huie, tai ki e. Thank you all, kia pai tō rā. Have a great day.